Alrighty guys, let's get into it. Kaiju number 8, also known as What If Godzilla Had a Midlife Crisis. This is the anime you never knew you needed. Now, if you're not already on board with giant monster fights, people running for their lives, and a protagonist whose main job is to clean up the carnage left behind, first of all, who hurt you? But second of all, no worries! By the time we're done here, you're gonna be diving headfirst into the wild world of Kaiju number 8, like your Kafka Hibino getting swallowed by a giant monster. Yeah, I said swallowed, we'll get to that though. So, what's the deal with this anime? Well, Kaiju number 8 is basically a love letter to anyone who's ever been stuck in a dead-end job, watching their friends thrive and thinking, well, this is my life now. Except in this case, instead of going back to school or finding a new career, our main character gets monster powers. Relatable, right? Meet Kafka Hibino. That's right, Kafka. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Did his parents name him after that Kafka, the one who wrote about people turning into giant bugs and existential dread? Maybe. I mean, Kafka Hibino does, in fact, turn into a giant something, so it tracks. But unlike the literary Kafka, this guy's transformation is less about depressing metaphors and more about kicking kaiju butt. Kafka's a 32-year-old guy who works a very unglamorous job cleaning up the mess after kaiju battles. Think of him as the janitor who comes in after a monster fight and wipes the kaiju guts off the street. Now, picture this. There's an epic kaiju battle downtown, buildings are leveled, people are screaming, and once the smoke clears and the heroes have left, Kafka rolls up with a mop and a bucket. If that doesn't scream underdog, I don't know what does. Now, Kafka wasn't always living the dream of monster cleanup. In fact, back in the day, he wanted to join the Defense Force, the elite team that actually fights the kaiju, but you guessed it, he failed the entrance exam. Like, a lot. So, instead of becoming a kaiju fighting hero, he's stuck cleaning up after them while his childhood friend Mina Ashiro goes on to become a badass Defense Force captain. If Kafka's life were a social media post, it'd be one of those expectation versus reality memes, except, like, way more depressing. So, Kafka's life is pretty much on autopilot. He's cleaning kaiju guts off the street while Mina's out there saving the world, and it looks like that's how things are gonna stay. But then, because this is anime after all, Kafka gets swallowed by a kaiju. Yep, I mean full-on Jonah and the Whale vibes here, going on, getting swallowed. Except instead of writing a blog post about this life-changing experience, Kafka wakes up as a kaiju himself. Not just any kaiju, mind you, he becomes Kaiju number 8. An insanely powerful monster with abilities that would make the Defense Force wet their collective pants if they knew he was out there. It's like Kafka's whole life flipped on his head overnight. Imagine if you spent years scrubbing floors at a superhero HQ, only to wake up one day with Superman's powers. The catch? You have to hide them from the very people who would vaporize you on sight if they ever found you. That's Kafka's life now. So, what does your boy Kafka decide to do with this newfound kaiju power? Take over the world? Destroy Tokyo? Nah, man. He's like, you know what? I'm gonna finally pass that Defense Force exam. That's right. Kafka's goal in life is to fight kaiju as a kaiju. It's like trying to join the cops while secretly being a master thief. I mean, who does that? Somehow, in his kaiju form, Kafka manages to sneak through the ranks of the Defense Force without anyone catching on that he's literally the thing they're hunting. Peak main character energy right here, am I right? Let's talk about characters. We've got quite the crew rolling with Kafka, each one more colorful than the last. First, there's Kafka Hibino, our hero. He's like your buddy who's been at the same dead-end job for 10 years but suddenly decides to start training for a marathon. I mean, you're proud of him, but you're also wondering, like, why now? Kafka's basically the ultimate underdog, except instead of running a 5K, he's trying not to get killed by his coworkers. Then we've got Mina Ashiro, Kafka's childhood friend and absolute unit of a kaiju slayer. She's the captain of the Defense Force, and while Kafka's cleaning up kaiju debris, Mina's out there looking like a total boss. She's stoic, serious, and basically everything Kafka wishes he could be. But there's still some low-key friendship there. Think of her as the Hermione to Kafka's Ron, except she's got a giant laser gun. Which kinda tracks. Next up is Rino Ichikawa, a young, bright-eyed recruit who works with Kafka. Rino's that kid in your friend group who's always super optimistic, and you're like, man, I admire your energy, but come here and let me tell you about life. Rino's enthusiasm is infectious, but he's also got no clue how much of a mess Kafka's life is really in. And of course, we can't forget about Kikoru Shinomiya, the Defense Force prodigy with serious daddy issues. Her dad's the commander, and she's trying to live up to this impossible standard. Picture a Netflix teen drama character, but instead of trying to get into an Ivy League, she's out there swinging a giant axe at kaiju. She's got that I'm better than you, but I'm lonely vibe going. Finally, there's Hoshina, the guy who's always super chill, but let's be real, could end you in a second. He's the type of character who looks like he'd rather be napping, but secretly, he's one of the deadliest kaiju slayers out there. Every anime needs a cool guy, and Hoshina fills that role like a boss. So, why should you watch this show now? Well, Kaiju No. 8 isn't your typical teen with godlike powers saves the world anime. No, this is about a 30-something dude who's been beaten down by life, given up on his dreams, and then gets slapped in the face with the ultimate power-up just when he's ready to call it quits. Honestly, it's the most millennial anime ever. The show balances giant monster fights with actual character development, which, let's be real, isn't always easy to find. Sure, you're getting massive kaiju smashing cities, but you're also getting Kafka dealing with the emotional baggage of watching his best friend become a hero while he's stuck cleaning up after her. It's like Attack on Titan, but with less existential dread and more, wow, Kafka, you're really a mess, huh? How about the art and animation though? Mwah! Honestly, when Kafka goes full kaiju mode, it's like Pacific Rim meets Godzilla, but with way more snark. His kaiju form is sleek and deadly, and he's got these insane powers that make you wonder why he's not just taking over the world. But then I remembered Kafka's too chill for world domination. He just wants to pass his Defense Force exam and maybe get a pat on his back for once. Relate, right? Let's take a second to appreciate how hilarious Kafka's transformation is. This guy spent his whole adult life scrubbing kaiju guts off the pavement, and now he's the one leaving the mess. It's like when the guy who cleans up after the Avengers suddenly got Hulk powers. Every time Kafka goes full kaiju, he's gotta hide it from the Defense Force because, well, you know, they'd probably vaporize him on sight. It's the ultimate I didn't think this through moment. Kafka's living a reverse superhero life. He's hiding his powers not from villains, but from the very people he wants to work with. If that doesn't scream awkward, I don't know what does. And let's not forget the sheer irony of Kafka's powers showing up after he's given up on his dream. It's like the universe looked at him and said, "Oh, you're done, are you? Well, here, have some insane monster abilities to make your life even more complicated." Typical anime logic, am I right? But also pretty spot on for anyone who's ever felt like life loves throwing curveballs. When Kaiju No. 8 premiered in April, it defied expectations, shaking up the battle anime scene with its focus on adult characters rather than your typical teenage protagonists. From the get-go, it was clear this wasn't just another shonen about a plucky kid leveling up in a world full of over-the-top fights. Instead, the anime gave us Kafka Hibino, a 32-year-old underdog with a midlife crisis and some monstrous problems of his own, proving that a shonen series can be just as compelling with a grown-up cast. And here's the kicker, it managed to pull this off without letting its raucous kaiju-sized action scenes overshadow its superb character writing. What sets this anime apart is its perfect blend of character depth and adrenaline-pumping action. Something that I feel has been missing from the shonen scene lately. In an era where shows like Jujutsu Kaisen often prioritize eye-popping battles over character growth, Kaiju No. 8 shakes things up by making every fight count. The battles aren't just there to wow us with flashy moves, they're woven into the story, amplifying the stakes and revealing what drives each character. It's not just about the biggest sword swing or the most over-the-top laser blast. It's about the emotions fueling every punch, every risk taken, and the sacrifices made along the way. This approach lets us connect with the characters on a deeper level, turning the series into more than just a monster-bashing extravaganza. I get the feeling the early episodes of Kaiju No. 8 have a vibe similar to the training arcs from Attack on Titan or My Hero Academia, where the focus is more on the heroes' relationships and less on saving the world. Watching Kafka bond with his team, whether it's over drinks or during downtime at the bathhouse, adds a layer to characters that initially seem like archetypes. Let's take Kikoru and Soshiro Hoshina for example. At first, Kikoru is the cocky, overachieving prodigy, and Hoshina's the aloof, sword-wielding badass. But by mid-season, they've evolved into fully realized characters with their own struggles and motivations. It's in these quiet moments that the show's theme of redemption and acceptance really start to shine through. I find it really creates a richer emotional payoff when the kaiju come knocking again. By the time we hit the season finale, all the character building comes to fruition. Each climactic battle feels more personal because we understand what's at stake for each character. Sure, Kaiju No. 8 doesn't stray completely from the typical shonen trappings. There are still power rankings, flashy moves, and kaiju with increasingly ridiculous abilities, but these elements don't feel hollow. Instead, they highlight one of shonen anime's most beloved qualities: watching the hero save people. Kafka's heroism isn't just about newfound powers. Whether he's rescuing civilians trapped under rubble or using his kaiju knowledge to help the defense force dismantle monsters, he's the kind of hero who steps up in ways that remind you why shonen anime is so enduring. The heart of the genre lies in characters who fight for something greater than themselves, and Kafka totally embodies that beautifully, even if he's still learning to control his monstrous new form. And we cannot forget the production quality. Kaiju No. 8 is the result of a dream collaboration between Production IG and Studio Kahara, two giants in the sci-fi and monster genres. Their expertise shines through in every frame, from the jaw-dropping action scenes to the detailed character expressions that convey a surprising range of emotion in a show about, giant monsters, right? Season 1 might feel like a slow burn prelude, but that's exactly what makes it so gripping. It's laying the groundwork for even bigger battles to come. But let's be real, while the kaiju bring the jaw-dropping spectacle, it's the human drama that really hits you where it hurts. The emotional stakes, they're what keep you glued to the screen, rooting for every character's next move. At the end of the day, Kaiju No. 8 is a monster anime with a heart. Sure, there's epic battles and kaiju smashing through cities, but it's also a story about second chances and what it means to keep going even when life keeps knocking you down. Kafka's out there getting literal monster powers, but the real fight is against his own feelings of inadequacy. And now who can't relate to that? We've all been there, right? You're scrolling through social media, watching your friends get promotions, buying houses, and having kids, while you're just trying to make it through the next week without spilling coffee on yourself. Kafka's just like us, except instead of a 9 to 5, he's got to worry about turning into a kaiju at the worst possible moment. Plus, it's just plain fun. The pacing is tight, the characters are well written, and the kaiju designs are spectacular. You're not just waiting around for the next big fight scene. The story actually keeps you hooked with humor, emotional depth, and some seriously wild plot twists. It's like Attack on Titan, but instead of constant despair, it's more like, we might die, but at least let's make it funny. In short, Kaiju No. 8 isn't just another monster anime. It's a shining example of how great character writing, when combined with thrilling action, can create something truly special. This first season may just be the setup, but if the foundation it's laid is anything to go by, we're in for something colossal. Catch you next time.